Let's look at our hymn books to hymn 656, Send the Light, all right? Talking about soul winning and going out and leading the lost and tonight. So we're going to start out with Send the Light, 656. Let's all stand. Remain standing for a word of prayer.
Well, good evening. Good evening. Few announcements to be mindful of. It's that time again. Don't forget tomorrow and Tuesday, 9 to 6 o'clock, if you can drop in for a few minutes. If you have time, we will be working on getting VBS decorations, as well as Friday after 6 o'clock or at 6 o'clock. We'll be wrapping up final decoration plans for Vacation Bible School starting Sunday. So if you can come out and help us with that, we would greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget this Saturday, Quilting Club from 9 to 2. Next Sunday, we'll be recognizing our high school graduates in the morning service. Also, next Sunday is our Bible Kickoff. We'll have a Bible Sunday on next Sunday. Looking forward to that. But then, once again, at 6 o'clock Sunday evening, as well as all week, Monday through Friday, June 12th through 17th, we will have Vacation Bible School. So you say, well, I don't have any part in it. You can. Come by, greet the kids, be an encouragement to those that are trying to do the play. You can have a part. So come on out and enjoy Vacation Bible School with us once again, June 12th through 17th. June 15th is Father's Day. June 19th is Father's Day. June 19th is also the evening that we leave for Camp Kobiak. So that means, and I don't have very many parents here this evening, but I'd like to have a short meeting next Sunday morning after church with those that are planning on going to camp, just so we can make sure we're all on the same page and we have our preparations ready for camp on the 18th or 19th. So if you could help us out with that, I would greatly appreciate it. June 26th, homecoming with final authority. And then once again, don't forget July 3rd, fish, fun, fellowship, fireworks, all the other F's that Brother Josh would add to it. We will have fun on July 3rd. Plan on a great time and sign up for ice cream, and we'll have a great time on July 3rd.
All right, somebody, it was Brother West. He walked up to me right during the invitation this morning. He said, "Preacher, I got the signia for next year's homecoming." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The sevens that'll get you to heaven: salvation, sanctification, separation, sacrifice, service, suffering, and soul winning." I thought, buddy, you're supposed to keep that. I'm glad you took the notes, but you're supposed to keep it, take it home so you can refresh yourself. But I appreciate it. At least, you know what? He listened. He got it, didn't he? So I praise the Lord for that. Well, it's we still got a lot on the agenda that's going to take place. Remember, next Sunday is Bible Sunday, and we're going to have our Bibles placed across the front of the church. And from that point forward, we're going to start getting our Bibles out. Yes?
Next Sunday also is graduates recognized.
When the graduates is going to be recognized. And so I know Miss Pam said she was going to try to get her granddaughter here and her new husband since she graduated from, I think, MU. So that'll be wonderful. All right. Anything needs to be mentioned tonight? Everybody just so quiet. You know, you all was quiet this morning. What's wrong with you? You scare me when you're that quiet. When Mama, when she got into that state of quietness, now she don't anymore. Gets in the state of quietness, that is. But when she did, it was always followed with a sniffle. She'd go to crying about something. And I was afraid you all was going to bust out in tears just any time this morning. Now you didn't, but don't clam up on me, because that scares me. It really does. There's not a whole lot of things that scare me, but that does. All right. God bless you, Brother Dan. Come on.
All right, let's look at 671, Rescue the Perishing. Think about sending out the Bibles and getting the message out and seeing people get saved. Amen? Each of these verses got a specific meaning, so that's so good, all right? Rescue the perishing, care for the dying, snatch them in pity from sin and the grave. Weep for the erring one, lift up the fallen, tell them of Jesus, the mighty to
We kicked him out.
Let's look at 139 in our hymn books. Hymn 139. This will be our fellowship song. Let's all stand. 139. Christ our Redeemer died on the cross, died for the sinner, paid all his due. Sprinkle your soul with the blood of the Lamb, and I will pass over you. When I see the blood us of sinners, Jesus will save. All he has promised that he will do. Washed in the fountain, open for sin, and I will pass over you. When I see the blood, when I see the blood, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Judgment is coming, all will be there, each one receiving justly his due. Hide in the saving, sin-cleansing blood, and I will pass over you. When I see the blood, when I see the blood, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Last verse. Oh, great compassion, oh, boundless love, oh, loving kindness, faithful and true. Find peace and shelter under the blood, and I will pass over you. When I see the blood, when I see the blood, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Amen. All right, Brother Bob, please will prayer.
Lord, thank you for the evening. Thank you for the service this morning. We enjoy being able to be free to come to your house and worship you, Lord. Just bless the offering, the gift to the giver, and give us safety on our way home. Lord, just watch over for all of our friends that are suffering from illness, and Lord, just bring them up and heal them. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. Okay, let's look at 651. 651, first, third, and last verses of the story to tell the nations. So it's not like my voice is about ready to go. So first, third, and fourth, okay? 651. We've a story to tell to the nation that shall turn their hearts to the right. A story of truth and mercy, a story of peace and light, a story of peace and light. For the darkness shall turn to dawning, and the dawning to noonday light. And Christ's kingdom shall come to earth, a kingdom of love and light. All right, Brian, come up and these last okay? I haven't got no voice. You come up and lead it, okay? We're singing the third and the fourth.
You guys are gonna have to bear with me. I don't know all those hand motion thingies here. So, all right, verse 2. We've a song to be sung to the nations that shall lift their hearts to the Lord. A song that shall conquer evil and shatter the spear and sword. And shatter the spear and sword. For the darkness shall turn to dawning, and the dawning to noonday bright. And Christ's great kingdom shall come to earth, the kingdom of love and light. Verse 4. We've a Savior to show to the nations, who the path of sorrow had trod, that all of the world's great people might come to the truth of God, might come to the truth of God. For the darkness shall turn to the dawning, and the dawning to noonday bright. And Christ's great kingdom shall come to earth, the kingdom of love and
I was thinking that Micah and Ben had a special, but I don't know.
No, Brian and Jeremiah has one. Y'all come. That's the only way I can do it anymore.
You just might as well sit up there, Brian.
Then we're getting ready to hear from Zach. Zach is, over the last 9 months, has made a tour around the world, just about. And we're going to get to hear from him and what the Lord's been doing there. We're excited about it. I always rejoice when I hear about young men and ministry. I tell you what, we're failing there in a big way.
Yeah.
And I rejoice when we do hear that young men are considering ministry. And I know Rachel's mom and dad, they lost their pastor at the first of the year. They're still looking. They found nothing. And so it's hard out there, folks. It's hard. You know that I've been looking for a youth director. My goodness, it's hard to find one. It's like seeking a needle in a haystack. That's an old statement that we use, but that's what it's like. It's so hard. So you be praying that the Lord would continue to lead us. All right, fellas, what do you say? Did you ever find that one?
No, sir.
You didn't find it. What are you doing up here?
You told me to come up here.
All right, brethren. and I'm not going to try to come up with the places that Zach has been. It's a real joy to have him with us tonight. Zach, you head on up this way. It's a real joy to have him. He's going to be sharing about his trip. Now, my understanding, he just didn't have the videos or the what do you call them, slides ready, but it's going to be good to hear from him as to what God has been doing in his life and the directions that maybe the Lord is leading him. Now, I'm sure it is. How old are you?
19.
You're 19. Did you all know exactly where he was going at the age of 19? There you go. No, we had no idea. David, did you know did you have any idea where you was headed at 19?
Choice of 3 or 4, none of which ever worked.
That's about the way we look at it, isn't it? But but it's a real joy to have Zach. So would you do this? Would you make him welcome as he shares with you?
So if you didn't know, well, I'm Jaden Wendell's grandson. And so, was that here? Okay, I kind of like that. I'll come down here. So for the past, I'll just say, going out of high school, I first went to Haiti on a mission trip the summer after my freshman year. And there's this, senior guy, and he was like, yeah, I'm doing this thing called the World Race. And I was like, what? I thought it was the Amazing Race. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is. And so I looked it up, and I was like, oh wow, it's this 9-month mission trip, gap year mission trip, right out of high school. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that outside of high school. And so senior year, I think, I was like, yeah, I signed up for it. And there were 3 different routes. And so my route originally was planned to go to Costa Rica, Thailand, and this country called Swaziland in Africa. And so then it started in September, and it's a discipleship program that's more missions attached to it, I'd say, because if you don't get discipled first, then I don't really think you can do missions, because then you don't really know what you're being and so so it all started out. We had 4 weeks in this place called Gainesville, Georgia, at their base. And then we would do 2 weeks with Samaritan's Purse. We did hurricane relief in New Orleans. And then we had a weekend debrief, and then we were going to leave for Costa Rica first in November. But when I started the World Race, I kind of thought, I was I grew up in the church, I went to a Christian private school, and I kind of knew all this stuff. I was I'm a Christian, I walk the walk, talk the talk, whatever. And then I was reading the book of Romans, and in Romans 9 it talks about predestination. I don't know if you guys have ever read the chapter of Romans 9, but it threw me for a whirlwind, and I was like, oh my gosh, is God good? Does he send some people to hell and some people to heaven? Is he doing this? And I'm like, is God even good? Have I just believed this because I've been told this my whole life? Threw me for a whirlwind. I was like, do I even believe in God? Why would I believe in God that I've been told is love, and then he chooses to send people to hell? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, how am I going to go on this 9-month mission trip if I don't even believe in God? And there's 40 other, we had squads, and there's 37 people on my squad, all 17 and 20 years old. And I was like, yeah, this is crazy. I was talking to my mentor, Lewis, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even know what I'm thinking. He's like, well, you need to figure it out. I'm like, thanks, that helps a lot. And so I was doing a lot of thinking, and I was like, well, I believe in God, definitely. I think nature just shows, God. I don't think any of it, and especially after traveling the world, in Costa Rica, we've seen, the roaring oceans. Guatemala, we got to hike a volcano. That was pretty cool. And just, all these things, I'm like, okay, there's no, doubt that, there isn't God. And I was like, okay, well, why do I believe in Jesus? Why do I actually think this is, Jesus is alive. Why do I actually believe he was raised from the dead? Like all these things. I was like, okay, like what makes Christianity different than Islam or Buddhism or all these different things? And then we would have like several like talks, I guess, per se. And so we had one on miracles, about God of miracles. And then we were like, the lady who talked was like, all right, well, like, who has like physical disabilities or anything that would love to be prayed for? Because we'd love to pray for them. And there was this one boy, and he had had a gag reflex for 16 years. And I remember that day he was healed of it. And the Lord told me then, he was like, Zach, if I didn't raise Jesus from the dead, then miracles wouldn't be happening in my name. And it like all clicked. And I was like, oh my gosh, like Jesus is alive. Like miracles wouldn't be happening if Jesus wasn't alive. Like that's impossible. And so that kind of like kickstarted me. I was like, okay, I believe this. Like this is my own. This is no longer like my parents' faith. It's like I actually have reason to believe this for myself.
Yeah.
And it's not just like because I was raised in it or I was told it my whole life. Like I was like, all right, I actually believe this for myself. But, you know, I was still kind of like nervous to share the gospel. Like that was still like shaky territory for me. And that continued into our first month of Costa Rica. So we were working in this like town called Jaco, Costa Rica on the Pacific coast, beach town. And there's like a lot of trafficking that goes there, drug trafficking, all this stuff. And so like the ministry we were partnered with, like the mayor of the town's like, I want you guys to paint light posts with like animals and sea creatures to kind of like make it more of a family environment. And so like that was our thing for like a month, kind of. And it was like during the day we'd go paint light posts, and they're like, people are gonna come up and talk to you probably, because they're gonna see like a bunch of young kids painting light posts, and they're like, it's a great opportunity to share the gospel. I didn't share the gospel once that month, which I think is kind of funny. Like now I think about it and I'm like, wow, that's such a great opportunity. But then I was like, nah, like people would come up to me and they'd ask me what I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm a part of the world race, like it's a gap year. And they're like, wow, that's great. But like, I would never tell them, hey, I'm a missionary for God, because I knew that would be like, that would take a bunch of people back. They'd be like, oh, okay. So it was more like, you know, I'd kind of introduce the organization, but I wouldn't tell them like what I'm actually like. I'd say I'm a missionary before I'm part of the world race. Like, and so, yeah, like went a month, had some cool experiences though. We talked to a lot of drug addicts. We did homeless ministry, and we would see the guys. It was like a busy town, like very Western town, a lot of like Americans, Europeans, but it was small. It was like 2 miles on the coast, and so it was cool because we'd go and do like homeless ministry, and then like throughout the week or on the weekends as we're like walking town, we get to see them. So that was pretty cool that we got to like kind of pour into those guys. But still, I was like kind of scared to like really share the gospel with people. And so then, so that was like all the squad was there, 37 people. And then next, we were there for a month, and then they were like, all right, we're gonna split up the squad. And so the squad had 7 teams, and each team is like, think of it as like a small group. But for us, we had 2 teams of guys, which is normally rare. We had 11 guys on our squad. Normally it's like, I'd say like 5 to 8 guys go on the world race, or like a route, and it's like 25 girls, like 20 girls. So we had a lot. And so we had 2 teams, and they're like, well, the 2 teams of guys are gonna go together to the same place. And we're like, sweet, like what are we doing? And they're like, we're sending you to like the jungle, this chocolate farm. And I don't know if any of you guys know what Teen Challenge is, with like David Wilkerson. So it's like this guy named Max. He's from Arkansas. He was like a former drug addict himself, sold drugs. And I don't remember his whole story, but he got called to Costa Rica. He got saved. And he's like, when I think about somebody sold out for the gospel, like this is the guy. Like he's left it all. He owns maybe one thing. He owns like a bike. But he lives with his family of 5. He rents out this house that like this Alaskan fisherman, he's like the 2nd largest fisherman in Alaska is what he told us. And he like loves what Max is doing. So Max lives in his house for 9 months. He gives Max his car. He's like giving him like chocolate farms. He's like buying a property, and they use the chocolate farm to fund their ministry. But like their ministry is they go to San Jose, which is the capital of Costa Rica, and they get like drug addicts and crack addicts off the street. and they take them back to their like farm per se, I guess. It's in the jungle, and they just do like rehab. So they have a men's center and a women's center, and so they're like, all right, well, first you guys are gonna spend like 2 nights in San Jose, and you guys are gonna be doing night ministry. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what the heck? So it was, oh shoot, I forgot to tell a story. I'll tell that after this. And so, yeah, Max is like, yeah, like we're gonna go out from 6 to 1 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, what the heck? Like normally our ministry hours had been like 10 to 4, something like that, you know. And they're like, no, now it's 6 to 1. And so they're like, so it was like 6 to 8 o'clock. We were in the hotel room doing like prayer and worship. And then from 8 to 1 in the morning, he's like, you guys are going out on the streets, and we're gonna go get these guys off the street. I'm like, okay. Like, you know, I haven't done it. I haven't shared the gospel with anybody, and now I'm going to tell drug addicts about Jesus. Like, I'm like, okay. And so, yeah, Max, the first night, Max is like, while we're praying, like, if you guys get any pictures, like, come to your mind, like, that could be from the Lord, could, maybe not, but, like, say it, and then if you see that person, like, we're just going to have you go talk to them, because, and I was like, we're like, okay. So I'm praying, and, like, I see this picture of a red hat, and I'm like, okay. I was like, I saw a picture of a red hat, and they're like, great, you know, if we see a guy with a red hat, go talk to that guy, whatever. And so we're, like, walking down the street, and we have, like, we're in, like, groups of, like, 5, and we're spread out, like, I don't know, all eyesight of each other, because, like, it's also, like, a very dark place. Like, Max is like, don't take anything with you. No phones, wallets. If you have piercings, rings, anything, you need to leave it all because, like, it's crazy. It was the darkest place I've ever been. And so he's like, oh, yeah, I see the guy with the red hat. And my friend Carter's like, Zach, there's the guy. Go talk to him. I'm like, okay. And Max is, like, a very go-getter. And he's like, you need to go talk to him. I'm like, oh, my gosh, okay. And so I like go up to talk to him, and this girl, CJ, and she's like, all right, what do you want to say to him? She like grew up a missionary in Costa Rica, so she like knew fluent Spanish. And she's like, whatever you want to say, like, I'll translate. I was like, and then my mouth dropped, like my jaw drops, and I don't say anything. Like no words come out of my mouth, very awkward. And I think CJ kind of got it, and she's like, she kind of spoke to him, and then she's like, will you pray for him? I'm like, yeah, and she translated my prayer. But that was a very trying time for me because I was like, all right, like I say I know the Lord, I say I know the gospel, but then when it's time to go share the gospel, I got no words. And it was very hard. Like the rest of the nights, like we're walking past brothels, crack houses. Yeah, it was definitely the darkest place I've been. Pretty crazy. And so it was just like a hard 2 nights, and then this guy, Alexis, decides, like, they got one guy, or I don't know how it worked, but they got him to come back on the bus with us, and he had, like, scars on his face, and he's, like, asking us for our phones and all these things, and we get to the jungle, or, like, the rehab center, and Alexis is not hanging out with, like, the guys that are in the program, he's hanging out with us, because, you know, like, it's, like, a year-long program, I think, and they're, like, not supposed to leave, but they can leave whenever they want. And so I'm pretty sure he was probably scared of the guys because they had been there for a while. And so he's just talking to us, like asking us for our phones, you know, asking us if we got girls. And we're like, no, man, like, you're kind of weird. And then we like tried to help him. We were talking about God, and he starts crying, and it was great. And then the next day comes around, and we're like, we are like, I guess kind of thing that we did while we were there is we were doing like manual labor for the women's center, and they were at a different place than the men's center. And we're like going to leave, and Alexis is walking down the road. And so Armando, he's like the second, number 2 in charge guy, and he like picks him up, and he starts talking to him, and basically like if they want to leave, they're like, yeah, you can leave. We're gonna buy you a bus ticket to this town called Limon, and then like, you know, you can do whatever you want, but we're not gonna force you to be here. If you want to be here, you'll be here. And so he gets in the car, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, man, this guy's throwing his life away. Like, this is awful. Like, I know what he's going back to because I just seen it the past 2 nights. And I didn't say anything to him. And so I was, like, really kicking myself those 2 weeks. Like, that was a very trying time. We also, like, there was a bunkhouse for us guys. We had no electricity. You know, it was like you work 8, or we got up at 5 a.m. You know, it's crazy what they do. They, like, the guys' rehab program is cold turkey, so they're just in there. They spend like 6 to 8 hours in the Word a day, and like you get up at 5 a.m., breakfast is at 6. Before every meal, they got to say a memory verse, and it switches like every day between Old Testament and New Testament. And they're like, we want you guys to come with a verse every day. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to have a memory verse every day for breakfast and dinner. It's got to switch between Old Testament and New Testament. Like, this was the most intense program I've ever seen. And these guys were dedicated. And it was cool because like you could really see that their lives changed. Like, they were very selfless and joyful. They would always serve us first. And it was just like really cool to see like they were caring for each other, that they would do chores. And it was like really awesome what they did. They like, I will always remember those guys as like examples of like transformation of Christ, because I think they just represented like the gospel so well. Because I saw it like the 2 nights in, like we did night ministry. It's like these guys were all like this. And then now I saw like the men they were. And I was like, wow, this could only be Christ. And so that was like a really cool thing to see. Another thing we did in Costa Rica, before we left, our mentor, Lewis, was like, he loves to do solitude. And so he's like, yeah, I want you guys to do 24 hours of silence and solitude. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Like I'd done maybe like 3 hours before, and that was like a lot. And so he's like talking to like our ministry partners, and like, yeah, where could we take the guys to go do 24 hours of silence and solitude? And this guy, Don's like, I have an island. And we're like, wow, like he's got an island. And so he's like, yeah, this island this is a big surf town too. And so he's like, yeah, like we go surf there. There's this like 2 people that live on this island. It's very secluded. We can take you there. And I was like, we're like, sweet, we're going to an island. Like, this is cool. And so one side of the island was like this river with crocodiles, had very jungly, and it had like a mountain in the back. And then it was like, had all pasture land on the island, and I don't know, there were peacocks, goats, and monkeys. And then there was this guy and his wife, he just like lived there. I don't know, it was weird. And then on the other side, you could walk, like he had a path, and on the other side he had like, it was just the ocean. Roaring ocean, most powerful ocean I've ever seen. And so Lewis was like, yep, all right, silence and solitude starts now. You guys need to learn how to abide with God and hear the voice of the Lord. So don't talk to each other. And I'll have dinner here for you guys when the sun goes down. He's like, you guys can do whatever you want. So we're like, sweet. And so like, I just start walking around the island trying to, I don't even know, find a place to sleep, I guess. I don't know. Throw my hammock or sleeping bag. And I don't know. But I was just like having a good time with the Lord. It was just me and the Lord, so I was just singing, doing all these things, having a great time. And I got very prideful. And I don't recommend this, but I invited Satan to come and attack me. Don't do that. I went swimming in the ocean, and I was like, yeah, like, try and attack me. Like, you got nothing on me. Biggest mistake of my life. All of a sudden, like, these were huge waves. Like, biggest waves I've ever seen. Like, Don, who, like, big surfer guy, he, like, says they're bigger than the waves in, like, South Africa or Hawaii where he surfs. So he's like, it's legit. And I'm, like, out there swimming by myself, and I'm like, yeah, come and attack me. And next thing you know, I'm, like, I'm caught in a riptide, I'm, like, behind the waves, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, people say, like, when you get caught in a riptide, swim sideways, and I'm like, that makes no sense, I'm not doing that. So I'm, like, trying to swim back, and I, like, see my friends on the shore, and I'm like, do I call out for help? Do I not? Like, I can't break silence, like, we're supposed to be this for 24 hours, but I'm like, what if I die? Like, I can't do this. And so then, I'm treading water, I can't touch ground, I'm way out behind the waves, and I'm like, all right, I gotta call for help. So I'm like, help. And like, my friend like tears off his shirt, my other friend's like, has a machete, like, I always remember this, like throws down his machete, they like come sprinting into the water. And then I felt like an idiot, like, I don't know how long I was treading water for, but it was like 10 seconds later, my feet hit the ground. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I felt like such an idiot because I was like, yep, you guys are good. Like, I just called out for help from all you guys, and now I'm like, I'm good. But that was definitely a lesson learning of don't ever ask Satan to attack you because, so that was definitely a learning experience. That was before we went to the drug rehab center in the jungle. But yeah, the drug rehab center was pretty cool. And we were there for 2 weeks. and then we went back with the squad, and we were in this Caribbean town called Puerto Viejo. And there we were also doing like a lot of manual labor there. We had to dig like an 8-foot hole, 6 feet by 3 feet. It's the worst thing ever. It's for septics, but yeah. And then towards our end of our time there, Rasta, I don't know if any of you guys know what YWAM is, Youth with a Mission. It was at a YWAM base. And he's like, yeah, you guys are gonna go do evangelism. And I'm like, still don't really like it. I'm kind of tired of digging a hole. And so I like envisioned it more as a task, because I always felt like, I gotta come back to the squad with like a story. And so I remember like I saw these 2 kids playing basketball. I was like, sweet, I'll play basketball with them, kind of form a relationship. And so I'm like, I don't know. We played some basketball, and I was like, man, like how do I tell these kids about Jesus? And so I'm kind of telling them again like what we're doing, and that like, yeah, we're like telling people about Jesus. And then they like asked me, they're like, is this an assignment? And I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys think this is a homework assignment? That convicted me a lot, because I think that showed like they were like, okay, this kid doesn't really care. Like my heart wasn't in it. And it was very convicting. You're telling somebody about Jesus, or kind of, and they're like, is this an assignment? And that's when I really learned like about love God, love people. And it's like, we should love God and be so consumed by his love that it should just be like, we should love people and have such a drive for people to know God. And that was still like I learned that over the course of the 9 months. And I don't think that was something I really realized until the end. So yeah, evangelism in Costa Rica, it was pretty rough. Beginning the race, still didn't really know how to do it. And then we left and we went to, we had a route change. We had 2 route changes. So we were supposed to go to Thailand. And then there was like, you had a 2-week quarantine, flights were like $2,000. So they're like, we're not doing that. So we were gonna go to Colombia. And then they changed that because I think there was like bombings going on in the capital or something like that. I don't know. And they're like, all right, you're going to Guatemala. And we're like, sweet. Like Adventures in Missions, the World Race is like a program for Adventures in Missions. And I knew they had like a pretty good base there. So far we hadn't stayed at like an AIM Adventures in Missions base. We'd been staying at like ministry partners bases. And so, yeah, we go to Guatemala, and the organization we worked with was pretty cool. The guys were like all together again, and we worked with this organization called One Way. And I think that what they do is awesome. So they go to they go to 2 places. They go to one place called San Lorenzo. I don't know if any of you guys know Guatemala, but we were like 40 minutes outside of Antigua. That's like a big tourist destination there. And so San Lorenzo was kind of on the way, but it's a very small town in the mountains. And kind of like what their vision is just to like, I guess kind of change the culture. Like if like we would do a lot of home visits, and like the fathers were all gone, a lot of absent fathers. A lot of the fathers were either, I remember one house we went to, the mother was like, yeah, my husband moved out and he moved in with this new woman and they're my neighbor, like he's living with her next door. I'm like, oh my gosh, like he got up and left the whole family. Now the sons, they're like 2 sons, they get on a bike and they I don't know how far, they go at least an hour. They get up at like 3 a.m. to go work, to provide for their family. And like a lot of fathers are alcoholics. There's like this one place in the town where they all go. But like what One Way does is they do like soccer training, they do education, they do a feeding program, and it's like every day. And because I also don't think schools are completely back in Guatemala. I don't know. And so it's like, and they're showing the kids the love of Jesus there. And it's amazing because it's like you got like 5-year-olds to 15-year-olds. And I was thinking a lot about, like before the race, I was thinking about like, how do you change culture? How do you do all this stuff? And I'm like, I think One Way does it. Like they're going in from a young age, it's all the kids in the community basically go there. Because it's like where they'll get the best education, they'll get fed, and it's like these great things. And One Way is just like changing the community based on just like the love of Jesus. And those kids are going to be raised in that culture. And so I really think that when those kids become adults, they're just going to be like, it's going to transform that town. And another thing we got to do that One Way does is they go to the Mayan communities in the mountains. Guatemala had like a civil war in the 1990s between like, I think the government and the Mayans. And so the Mayans all went to the mountains. And so it was like our first day of ministry, and we went to the mountains, and all the girls are in like these traditional hand-knit dresses, and they're just coming out of nowhere. Like dirt roads, they're coming out of the forest and like, I don't know, groves of people. And they also don't speak Spanish, they speak this language called cachique. So one way, they're all like native Guatemalans, so they like personally sometimes have a hard time reaching them because they speak Spanish and the Mayans speak cachique. But they're like, those kids, they're in the mountains, all they do is work. Like they just work for their families. They're not educated, so one way goes there once a week. They feed the kids, most of the kids are malnourished. And so that was really cool to do that, go visit homes there, go like be with the kids. But one thing that did happen, one way had their car stolen like yesterday or 2 days ago. And that's like really sad because they're a very poor organization. And so, I don't know how they're gonna get there anymore. Because it's like a 2-hour drive into the mountains that we take. But yeah, they're a great organization. And that was just like some of the cool things we do. We go do home visits, just to encourage the people there, share Jesus with them. And then our last country that we got to go to was Africa, or Swaziland, it's Eswatini, but formerly known as Swaziland. And I would say that was where I really got kind of like empowered in my faith. Because so Adventures in Missions has a base there. And what they do, a lot of the kids, you go to primary school is paid for, but high school you have to like pay for it your own. So kids don't get a high school education. They'll go to like 7th grade or 6th grade, and then if you can't pay, you can't go. And so like what Adventures in Missions does for them is they'll pay for kids' school fees so they can go. And but they also we were working at these care points where we'd feed these kids like, I don't know, it was like rice, made in like huge, I don't know what to call it. I don't know, like rice, I guess. It's called Manna Pack. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is. And so the kids would be fed there, they'd be loved on, and it was called, the people of the like care points were called shepherds. And so it kind of depended on like what shepherd you had, but my shepherd was very kind of like, she was very soft-spoken, laid back. And so one thing that Tandi told us, who was like our AIM leadership person, was like, you guys are there to love the kids, yes, but like what Adventures in Missions goal is community development. So it's like, yeah, I love the kids, but like, after I leave in 2 months, like nothing's really gonna change if I don't go and talk to like the families and do home visits and like talk to the parents or like the leaders of community, because things will just always be how they are. And so I was like, okay, like I had this in my mind. I'm like, okay, this is like the mission. And so then I was like, all right. Well, it was also so hard for me because I got to like talk to some of the older boys, and they spoke English in Swaziland. It's like their second language, and they have to speak it in school. And the teachers will hit them if they don't speak English, which is kind of crazy. And so I kind of like, I would play soccer with them, I would play cards with them, and I would like, they were really fascinated that we get to hunt with guns here. They were like, yeah, we hunt with dogs, and it was dogs and slingshots. And so when I told them I got to hunt with guns, they're like, wow, like that's cool. And so and they were also surprised that we kill frogs. I don't know. But, and they would be like, yeah, like we get attacked by baboons. Like they would like point to the dog's ears and they're like, yeah, the dogs get attacked by baboons. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I was like really getting to form like bonds with these like older teenage boys who were like 14, like 19. And it was because they had like 2 weeks off, so they were at the care point, but then they were going back to school. And so we like came back, well there's 2 weeks, and then the next week I come and they're all gone. And I was like so sad. I was like, man, like these were the kids that I really like kind of were drawn to and like loved to talk to. And I was like really hoping to share more about Jesus with them. Because like in their culture, they're a Christian culture, like culturally they're Christian, but then they have things like ancestor worship tied in. And like, well, I'll give you this. The king has 15 wives, and like every year the girls have to come dance for the king. It's crazy. Like, I don't know how young you get to be, or I won't say get to be, but you start at a young age and you go and dance for the king, and then the king picks like a wife from the people that are dancing from him. It's crazy. And they're like the last kingdom in Africa. And like the year before, there were like tons of protests because the people don't like the king, and it's weird. The king also like is given the platform to preach the gospel. So it's like very weird, like how like they have a lot of like traditional things thrown in there with like Christianity. And so I don't know what I was saying. Oh, I don't know. Oh, it was like after the king's birthday. The king's birthday is a huge holiday there. And so we come back to the care point, and all the kids had gone off to school. And I remember there were like these 3 boys that were there. They were like high school age. And I was like, yeah, why aren't you in school? And they're like, well, my parents were able to pay for my brothers, but they can't pay for me. And I was like, dang, like that broke my heart. I was like, your parents have to pick between like which of their kids get educated. And I was like, that like was so sad to me. So that day I was like, yeah, like I have a high school education from America, I can teach you guys. So I taught them algebra, which was cool. And then the next day they didn't come back, and I was like really sad, just because I was like, dang, these kids were cool. But then I learned later that AIM, or Adventures in Missions, was able to pay for their education, so they're in school, which was great. But after that, I was like, all right, well, like, what can I do? Because now it's like, they're like 5-year-olds, a lot of younger kids that would come. And it's kind of hard for me to like really think I'm doing ministry when I'm like, sitting and holding a kid. To me, that's like, I'm like, yeah, we're loving the kids, but I'm not really sharing Jesus. And I'm like, this isn't going to change the community if I come and like hold this kid for 2 hours today. Who like, yeah, they don't have the best like love from their parents, or they have absent parents, but like, I don't know. I don't know if you guys understand what I mean, but so I was like, all right, like, our goal is community development. Like that's their mission. I'm like, how can we do that? And so I was like, and since our Shepherd was very laid back, it's probably like one of my favorite things, because then it empowered me to be like, all right, if I want to go do this, like I gotta make it my own. Like I gotta go ask her if we can go do home visits, go encourage the believers here. And I also got to a point of like, why not? Why not go encourage the believers? Like this is what we're here to do. I got to a point of like, God loves me so much. I'm like, let's go love other people, And so that was like really cool. And I was just like, yeah, like let's go do 2 or 3 home visits today. And she's like, really? Like she's like, we don't even have food. And I'm like, we can just go and talk to them. And like in Eswatini, they because of COVID, they weren't like allowed to go out of their houses unless they had like a voucher to go to the grocery store. So people like hadn't been out of their homes for 2 years. So they were also very private people. And I'm like, yeah, let's go talk to them. Like they haven't talked to anybody in like 2 years. And another thing, this was like, I think one of the biggest like things the Lord did for me, or redeeming things, was that like my prayer was like, yeah, like I want to be unashamed of the gospel, and like I want to get to a point in my faith where like I'm not afraid to stand alone with Christ. Like if it's like me and Christ alone, I will be okay. Like if my family leaves me, if Christian community leaves me, if anybody leaves me, I'll be okay. And so that was like, yeah, like I want to get to that point, because like I saw my mentor Lewis is going to Iran, and I'm like, wow, like that's crazy. Like he's going to Iran in 2 years. I'm like that's wild. And so I'm like, yeah, like I would love to get to that point in my faith. And so we decided, like we went on a walk. We were also on like the South African border, and like the border there, we're in a very poor community, so it's like 3 rocks in the road is the border between Swaziland and South Africa. So it's like you can just walk on through, nobody says a thing. And so there was a military checkpoint because we were at the border, and a lot of Swazis, because there's such high unemployment in Swaziland, they'll come to the military checkpoint, and then they'll go, I guess I don't really know how it works. They go and check in with the Swazi military, and then they go across the border and work in South Africa, and then come back that night. But, so there's a lot of people going across this border right at my care point. And so we go for a walk one day. We went to this river, and then we come back, and I'm like, I'll just there was a shipping container that got kind of turned into a convenience store. And so people will come, and they'll buy food, and there's this tree with a bench. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just go sit down on there. There's 5 kids at the care point. There's 4 other kids on my team. I'm like, they can go play with the kids. I'll go talk to these people. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting to know them, talking to them. And some of them are like in the military, some of them are just passing through. And I like start talking to them about God, and there's this one woman who like, because it's so cultural, it's like, yeah, they all go to church or whatever, but like I would say not a lot of them actually know it for themselves. And so she's like, yeah, like I have all these questions about my faith. And I was like, well, what are they? Like, I'd love to help you. And so she just like starts asking me these questions, and I'm like able to rattle off answers like never before. I'm like, wow, this is cool. And so that day I like ended up talking to her and like who would ever like walk in for like 2.5 hours. And I was like, whoa, like before, like I was scared out of my mind to talk to people about the gospel. And now like I'm all by myself, I'm talking to people about God. Like I would have never done this before. And then I was at that care point for a while, so it was like in the morning I'd go play with the kids, and then in the afternoon I'd go sit on the bench and talk to people, and like I'd talk to them about like witchcraft. Like I had a bracelet, and they'd be like, do you do witchcraft? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, why do you wear a bracelet? And they like, I guess, thought that was superstition or something like that. I don't know. Or like they would ask me questions. They're like, yeah, like I believe in Jesus. I have 3 wives. You know, Solomon had 700. Why can't I have 3? And I'm like, dude, I've never thought of that. Like it's these weird questions that stick out to them in their culture that would like never stick out to me in Western thinking. Or like, you know, I'm talking to them, they're asking me about ancestor worship and Jesus. And they're like, well, like if Moses died, how is Moses there at the transfiguration? And I'm like, I don't know. Or like, he asked another one about like, it's in Hebrews, it's like, I think it's Hebrews 11:4, and he talks about like, is it on? Yeah, it's on. He like, yeah, it says like, though Abel died, his faith lives on. And the guy was like, is Abel still alive? And I'm like, yo, like, I would never think of these questions. Like, it's weird. And so it was definitely like really cool to have these conversations with guys. And I'm like, you know, and it definitely made me question, or it made me like actually think about these things. And I'm like, okay, do I actually like, why do I believe it's okay, like I'm only supposed to have one wife? Like, do I just believe I'm supposed to have one wife because, you know, raised in American culture and society, it's like, you have one wife. It's like what you do. Versus there, it's like, yeah, I can have 3 wives. Like, what's wrong with that? And so it, like, actually made me think about, like, and go into the Bible and the Word and be like, all right, why is it wrong to actually have 3 wives? Versus I've always been told that. Or, like, why is ancestor worship bad? Or, like, all these things of, like, why not to actually go into the spirit world? They would, like, one day I met the witch doctor. We wanted to go visit the witch doctor. We wanted to go to a house visit. We're like, yeah, let's go show him God. Like, why not? We got God on our side. Like, what can he do to us? And, like, all the shepherds were like, no, you're not going to do that. They, like, had all this. They were like, we're not playing around with that. We, on the other hand, were like, yeah, let's go. We never got to go, which was kind of sad. But one day I'm, like, sitting under the tree with the guys. And this guy, like, really dressed up nice, got like blue jeans on, striped shirt, and he had like this, I don't know what it was. It was like a gold piece in his teeth. And I'm like, wow, okay, this guy's rich. Like he dresses a lot nicer than this local Swazis. Comes up, shaking my hand. He's like, what's up, man? Like, how you doing? I'm like, great, man. Like, what's going on with you? He's like, nothing much. And then he like goes up and talks Siswati to like the guard. And he walks off, and the guard's like, yeah, that's the witch doctor. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you notice how he smooth talks to you? He's like, he wants your money. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was very interesting. Like, the witch doctor was a pretty cool guy, to be honest. Like, pretty nice. But it was definitely really cool just to see, or like, it was also weird, like these cultural things. Oh, this is a cool one. Okay. So we went like bush camping with these guys that like, they work for Adventures and Missions. And we went bush camping with them, and one night we just started talking about cultural things. And they're like, why do you guys as Americans, you guys go to the store and you open like food or a bag of chips in that in front of everybody, and you only keep it to yourself? They're like, if we open food in front of everybody, you're expected to share with every single person in front of you. Like if you want to eat something, you're gonna go by yourself and eat it. They're like, why don't you guys do that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I buy food for myself. And then they're like, well, they were talking about how they care for each other, and they're like, we go so far, like, let's say Grandpa has 6 children, and preacher, you have none, okay? You can ask Wendell for one of his kids, and he will gladly give you his child because he's been so blessed with children and you haven't. And so he will gladly do it. And I was like, what the heck? Like, that's crazy. Like, and they're like, sure, yeah, like, why wouldn't I do that? And I'm like, wow, like, you know, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I'm like, you know, that's like a cool mindset to have of like, yeah, I've been blessed with so many things, like, why wouldn't I just go freely give to you, like, I have an abundance of. And so that was definitely a little, like, thought-provoking. I was like, okay, that's, you know, that's a little weird, but, I mean, I think the message is good. Or, like, it was weird, like, one guy, we're, like, playing volleyball. We'd play, like, volleyball after ministry with these guys, and my friend Abby sits in front of Fontini, who was, like, he was a Swazi, and he's like, Zach, can I speak with you? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you know, if you sit in front of somebody, that means you wish their bad luck upon them. And I was like, at that time, I was like, bro, like, you believe in God. Like, why do you believe that stuff? I didn't tell him that, but I was like, cool, man. I was kind of tired. I was ready. It was at the very end. I was kind of getting ready to go. And I was just like, okay, man, like, I don't really care. But it's definitely, like, interesting when you hear, like, when you see, like, other cultures and what they believe. And, like, when Paul talks about, like, become all things for all people, and he talks about, like, different convictions or, like, you know, like, if people don't eat meat, like, he doesn't say, like, oh, be like, you have to eat meat. He's like, sure, just love them, or stuff like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. But it's interesting to see people that believe in God, and then my mind is still confused on that one about the guy believing in bad luck. I don't really know what I think on that yet. But it was very interesting to see other cultures and how they worship God. They dance at church, which I think is really cool. They're very joyful. One story of joy, we were going to do a house visit, and like their houses are all made out of rock, like bricks, rocks, mud. And we go, old woman, she's raising her grandchild alone. Her daughter's in South Africa working. And we're like, yeah, like, how are you doing? And she's like, I'm great. I'm like, what? Like, you're a single grandma, you're raising your 9-year-old child, your daughter's in South Africa working. And she's like, well, like, I have the Lord. Like, I'm great. And I was like, what? And so that was cool because, like, you know, normally at house visits, we're going to encourage the believers. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, wow, like, you know, this lady doesn't have a lot. You know, she's middle of nowhere, Africa. I don't know if she had running water. I don't think she had electricity. She's on her own. She's raising her granddaughter alone. And she's great. She has the joy of the Lord. And that was probably that was pretty cool because I'm like, all right, this lady, like, it's not in her circumstances that determine her joy. Her joy is in the fact that she's saved. And, like, she is free from sin. And that was something I've definitely tried to keep in my head. It's like, okay, it doesn't matter if I'm tenting, like living in a tent in Africa, if I have no bed sheets in Africa and I have to sleep in my sleeping bag, or if I have like a TV at Grandma and Grandpa's house. Like, my joy shouldn't be determined on what I have around me. Like, my joy should be determined on having a relationship with God. And that was definitely something that, like, has changed since, like, going on it. A lot of just like abiding with God, making my faith my own, like joy. And it's like a joy nobody can take away from me because, like, I'm free from sin, free of death. And it's like that idea of just like, you know, like, I'm one with God. Like, what a great miracle that is, that I can be one with God because of Jesus. And so, yeah, if you're young and you don't know what to do, I'd go in the road race, change my life, change a lot of other people's lives on my squad. So I'd recommend going on the road race if you're young and you're going to graduate high school soon. So, yeah.
All right, Zach, I tell you what, you was talking about Solomon with his 700 wives. And we have 3. You know the reason we just have 1 here? Man would go crazy. All right, we appreciate your willingness to come and share with us your experiences. You know what I appreciated about him? His honesty. because there was that hump that he had to get over in order to present Jesus Christ. Folk, as we go out, come Sunday, and we start delivering Bibles to our community. Now, we may not see the sights that Zach saw, but we're going to see similar sights.
Yeah.
And we're going to start hearing rumors. Remember when I told you when we put up the walls of that last building that burnt? I said, town's going to go to talking. Well, when you start passing out our Bibles, taking them into the whole community, we're going to start hearing rumors. We're going to start hearing some discussion. There's going to be some complaints. You say, preacher, why would anybody complain about us giving out Bibles? Because we're giving out Bibles.
Yep.
We're giving out the Word of God.
Yep.
So mark it down. I'm sure that, like Zach, is shocked by the culture that he found himself in. We may be shocked as well by the culture that we find ourselves in. It could be very difficult. So we're excited, looking forward, just as Zach is, what God has got for him, what God's going to be doing. I don't think he needed to worry about fulfilling the time. I believe that he done that rather well, don't you all? Amen. Son, you can even be a preacher. All right. Y'all let him know how much you appreciated having him tonight. We're going to stand and be dismissed in a little prayer. If y'all like me, I tried to get up and walk and I couldn't. I had to grab hold of the pew. I tell you what.
That's what they for.
That's right. That's the reason we got the high back, so they easily grab
Don't
hold.
sit on that foot.
Brother Robert, it's good to see you this evening. It's always good to see Brother Robert, isn't it? Yeah. He's just always got that kind, sweet smile about him. And he does stand out a little bit with his orange shirt. So, Brother Robert, would you dismiss us in a word of prayer, please?
Father, we just thank you for the time we've had tonight to be in your house and to learn about culture outside of our